Share some strategies with you that will allow you to maybe get through some of those roadblocks and really create that positive classroom culture. So we are also joined today by Robin. Robin, you want to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today.
So Robin will be kind of in the background. She'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have any tech issues or anything like that, please post those in the chat so she can help you out. She'll also be running some polls that we'll have in this webinar as well. And we also have a hyperdoc that has all the resources that I'm going to go over, all the strategies that I'm going to cover, including a couple that aren't or that I don't have time to cover. So Robin's going to post a link to that in the chat, so you are free to access that as we go through, and you can have that for after the webinar as well. This webinar is also being recorded, so after we are done here, you'll receive an email, and it'll have a link to that recording for you to watch at your leisure going forward. I also want to take a moment to talk about our sponsor, Blue Apple Projects. So Blue Apple Projects allow teachers to engage students, teach the content, and make the world a better place. So every project includes project plans and supplies. There are online options. There are real-world connections for you to use with your students. It's curricular, and there are many collaboration options for you with these Blue Apple Projects as well. So if you're interested in looking at our offerings for Blue Apple Projects, you can go to blueappleteacher.org and see all of the listing of the projects that we have there. And since you're joining this webinar, if you use the coupon code webinar at checkout, you can save 10% on your next project. So I'll get started here by just kind of seeing who's with us today. So I'm curious what grade of students you teach. So Robin's going to launch a poll here. So either early elementary, upper elementary, middle school, high school, or admin or other. Go ahead and click the one that's appropriate for you.
All right, Corey, I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds as they keep rolling in here.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so we are at 42% middle school, followed by 27% early L, followed by 18% upper L, 12% admin and other, and 9% high school.
Awesome. All right, thank you. So we are hoping to, the strategies that we're going to cover here today are really going to be kind of geared towards K-8, but I'm also hopeful that, even for our high school attendees, that there's something that you can take away from this webinar to implement in your classroom with your students. So that's awesome. So we're going to talk about why a positive classroom culture is so important. I'm sure that, as a teacher, you guys have a lot of feelings on creating that positive classroom culture, and you probably already know why it's so important. We're just going to spend a little time talking about the importance of it and why it matters. And then we're going to kind of focus on 3 different pillars that really make up a positive classroom culture. So we'll talk about those 3 pillars, and then the majority of the time is really going to be spent looking at those strategies under each pillar, or between or underneath each pillar, excuse me, that really you can implement with your students. So we're gonna, again, why it matters. Why is it so important to create a positive classroom culture? I'm sure that we are now a couple months into the school year, that you might be experiencing some maybe disruptive behaviors with some students in your classroom. They're distracting others, they're not staying on task, right? And so what are some ways that we can help to kind of guide them back to the topic at hand and keep them respectful of others, and really not distracting the classroom? Maybe you're experiencing a loss of connection with your students. It is, especially in today's day and age, it is very easy for students to be isolated and to kind of feel alone. So what can we do as teachers to really make sure that every student feels like they're valued and feels like they matter? So how can we create that sense of community? And maybe you're experiencing some students that are just disengaged. They're not distracting others. They're not being disruptive towards you or anyone else. They just don't necessarily care about the content that is being taught, and they're not interested in being there or being in school. So the goal today is to really provide strategies to maybe try to solve some of these roadblocks that you might be experiencing in your classroom. So to that point, I'm just going to launch another quick, or Robin's going to launch another quick poll here. I want to know, what are those main roadblocks that you see in your classroom when it comes to creating a positive classroom culture? You can select one or more of the following, but maybe it's those disruptive behaviors, disengaged students, no sense of connection with students, or maybe it's something else entirely.
All right, let's do 5 more seconds as they keep coming in. All right. So Corey, it looks like all of them are roadblocks, but at the top we have 87% is disruptive behaviors, 51% disengaged students, 18% said other, and then 8% said no sense of connection.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you for filling that poll out. And like I said, I'm hoping that when you walk away from this webinar today, it sounds like overall, disruptive behaviors is our most popular kind of roadblock here. But for anything that you're experiencing when it comes to creating a positive classroom culture, there's something for you to use even tomorrow with your students. So when we talk about classroom culture, we really need to get the complete picture. And I love to use the analogy of a stool when I talk about classroom culture. So as we all know, stools are used for sitting and they have legs to provide the support to the base of the stool. And so when we add one leg to the base of the stool, that's great. One leg is very important, right? But it doesn't complete the picture, because if you try to sit on that stool, and it will eventually fall over and you will fall over, right? So that stability isn't there, even though that one leg plays a really important role. So then when you add another leg, that's great. Another leg to create that stability, or to help to create the stability, it plays a very important role, but it's still not quite there. That stool is still wobbly and it's still not a complete picture. It's not until we get 3 legs. And when you have all 3 legs to a stool, then you can sit on it. It can do the function that it's supposed to do. And the classroom culture is kind of the same way. We're going to talk about the 3 pillars of creating a positive classroom culture. And each one is very important. And it's really when you take all of them into consideration, though, where you really can thrive with creating that culture. So the first pillar that we're going to cover today is community. So, maybe you are feeling that your students don't really have a sense of connection in your classroom. Maybe it's to you, maybe it's to the other students in your classroom. And so I'm going to share some strategies with you on ways to create that community with your students to make them feel like they matter. Every single one of your students matters. And so they matter with you, and creating that collaboration piece with other students, some real easy ways for you to be able to do that. Then the second pillar that we're going to cover today is content. So thinking about the content that we have to teach. We have our standards, we have our lessons that we have to teach our students. But if they're disengaged, they're not going to be interested in it. And we all know that a student that is engaged in the learning, engaged in the content that is being taught, helps to really curb some of those maybe behaviors that we're seeing in our classroom that are kind of disruptive. So I'm going to give you some strategies for trying to teach that content that you're going to do regardless, but how can we do it in an engaging way to really get our students to stay on, or to be on board with it. And then the last one is conduct. So I know the majority of that poll that we just had was disruptive behaviors. So how can we set clear expectations, share the consequences with students if those expectations aren't followed? But how can we do it in a way to show that we still care about our students? So going even back to the first pillar with community and that connection piece too. We have to have those clear expectations. We have to have those consequences, but how can we do it in a way to show the students that we still care about them? So I'll share strategies here with that one as well. So we're gonna get right into our first pillar here, so community. And I'm gonna be upfront with everyone here. So each pillar has about 7 different strategies. Some of them are very surface level. They're just very simple things that you can do today or tomorrow with your students. And some of them require maybe a little bit more time to kind of dive into to help your students, but they are well worth the investment. So we're going to start with just greeting your students every single day. But it's not enough to just say, good morning, class, just as a whole, right? We want to make sure that every student knows that they matter. So a simple greeting to each individual student every single day is something very easy to do, but it can have a really big impact with your students because they know that you care about them. You took the time, even as small as it was, to say, hi, how are you doing today? That can be super powerful for students to know that they matter. Hallway conversations is another strategy that you can implement, another easy strategy. So this could mean, you know, if your kids are a little bit older, they're walking to different classes, you see them in the hallway, you know, don't shy away from them. Make sure to engage them just real quick in passing, hey, how's it going, kind of thing. That can also help, but also within the class. You know, we think about being removed out in the hallway during class is like kind of a bad thing, like if there's some, you know, misbehaviors, but it doesn't have to be, right? So take the time to just pull a student, an individual student out of class, talk to them for 30 seconds. Doesn't have to be a long thing, you know, as they're working or doing group work or whatever it might be, to just take them out and just check in with them. How's it going? How's their life? Again, creating that sense of community, really making them know that they matter and that they are important. The next one is the handshakes, hugs, and high fives. So this one, you know, again, it's not content related. It's not really misbehavior or disruptive behavior. Just making sure that they know that you care. Just giving them a handshake, giving them a high five, a very quick hug, knowing that, hey, you know, I recognize you. I know that you're here. I appreciate it, and letting them know that. It's a simple thing, but it can have powerful impacts on these students. Bonus points if you do kind of like a customized or unique handshake with each student. I'm impressed if you're able to do that. But even if you're not, just doing a general handshake or high five, whatever it might be, helps your students know that you're thinking about them. And then the next one I have here is the Post-it check-ins. So, you know, if your students are working on a project or maybe a paper that they have to eventually turn into you for a grade, it's kind of helpful for them to know that they're not just a grade or they're not just a letter to you. You're not just going to look over that paper or that project and just assign a grade and then go on. So before that due date, whenever that might be of that final project or final paper, just taking a Post-it note and writing kind of 2 main ideas, some feedback on the project that they're working on. It's nice to have individualized feedback for students, especially as they're working towards, you know, getting that A on that assignment. But it also, I really like this one because it kind of limits you to 2 main ideas on that small Post-it. So being able to post that is, or giving them a Post-it can also help with that community piece. Next up here, so these ones are a little bit more, you know, take a little bit more time, but they, again, are worth the investment. So we have Curiosity Network. So these are strategies, and these are all linked in the HyperDoc resource as well. But these are strategies that allow for, or help to allow for collaboration with you and your students and within your student body. So the first kind of idea, you're probably familiar with the think, pair, share idea, but it really is a powerful strategy to help students really think about whatever topic you're presenting, give them a second to internalize it, then pair them with a partner, they talk together, and then they share out as a partner pair. So there's not the pressure for the individual to share with the class, but you're doing it together, building that collaboration. The jigsaw kind of strategy is a great one to kind of group people or group students together, but then they each have their own individual task to work on. So they go off, they complete that task, they come back together, and then they're able to share with each other what they learned. So every student matters. It matters what I learned over in the other area, so to help us solve our problem or our challenge that we're working on as a group. The truth contagion, I really like the truth contagion strategy. It's really a great one. So basically, if you have a question or a challenge that you want to ask the students, their opinion on, or what they think is the fact or the correct answer. They kind of vote on what they think is the correct answer. So you put all the answers on the board, and then they vote, oh, I think it's, A, B, C, D, or whatever it might be. But then after that, you give them a little bit of time to talk with each other and to try to persuade others of what they think the correct answer is. So a lot of times students have to use the reasoning, and they have to be able to be persuasive when they are trying to share what they think the correct answer is. And then after a little bit of time, you share you kind of vote again, and then you can see how maybe the answers have changed, before and after they talked with each other. And hopefully, if there is a correct answer in this case, it kind of moves the class forward towards a correct answer. And then the last kind of strategy under the curiosity networks is diverse groups. So it's really important to make sure that, when we group students, that there are multiple perspectives for each student, that they are all together in a group. We don't want a group of 5 students that share all the same perspective necessarily all the time. And so diverse groups is a strategy to really diversify your groups. So it starts by maybe giving them a very simple personality traits quiz at the beginning of the year, just to get to know the students, what they would rate are their character traits. And then after that, we have a resource that you can use where you can put all of your kids in there, and then you can put the different traits that they studied or that they picked, and then it automatically creates those different groups. So if you're looking for introverts and extroverts to be together, this is a great way to do that, and then have those multiple those perspectives kind of all in one place. The next one is the perspective taking strategy. So you're probably familiar with what color is the dress here. And again, this is just another opportunity for kids to understand they have their own individual perspective, but then everybody else has their perspectives as well. And so trying to have a respectful debate, taking a stand, for example, on something as silly as what color is the dress, helps students to start to internalize, my perspective versus everybody else's perspective. And it allows to build that collaboration, to build that community. And then the last strategy I want to share for community, for the pillar community, is the cheerful baboon. So it's really hard to say the word baboon without smiling, whether you're an adult or a kid. And so, this strategy is meant to take advantage of that idea, is to kind of inject some silliness into the students as you're going throughout your year. So I have a quick video that I'm going to play here to talk about the cheerful baboon.
Okay, so kids are silly, and that's good, but sometimes that silliness gets out of control. And so one of the best classroom management strategies is to inject a little bit of silliness into your classroom in a way that really fits well into your own culture, into your own class community. So for me, I use the cheerful baboon. It's super simple. I just explain to the kids that the word baboon is a sort of magical word. Whenever you say it, you magically become just a little happier than you were before. And because I care about them and want them to be happy, we are going to use the magic of baboonery to bring joy into the class. So instead of saying good morning, we say merry baboon to you, my friend. And when we pass each other in the hall, we whisper
merry baboon in baboon. Merry baboon, men.
Merry baboon to you, my friend. When we need to cheer up a little bit, we just let out a nice loud like that, and it works. Now,
so that is a really easy way to, again, that one doesn't take that much time, but it does kind of introduce that silliness, that joyfulness to your classroom whenever you maybe need a little shot of that. All right, so we are going to move. We are going to move on there to our second pillar, the content pillar. So thinking about the content that you have to teach, what are some ways that we can get your students to, or you can get your students to be engaged with the content that's being taught in a meaningful kind of way? So the first strategy we have here is the wonder wall. So really, you're introducing a new topic with your students, allowing them to take some Post-its and write down what they wonder about that topic. Maybe they have some questions, right? And so this is a way to, it's a kind of a cool visual to keep up on the board if you can during that unit or during that topic that you're covering, but then being intentional about going back to it throughout the unit. So looking at some of the questions that the students have asked and maybe pulling a couple down and actually addressing them and answering them and discussing them as, as a group. That's a great way to keep students engaged. The next one is the idea snowball. So this one is, you thinking you have a topic, you have a reading that you want the students to reflect on. They start just kind of individually looking and reflecting on that topic or that video, whatever it might be. But then they work with maybe a small group and there's a discussion between the group about the topic that was just covered. And then from there, we do a whole group kind of conversation. It's really a powerful way to start small and then kind of get to the whole group talking together. And hopefully it encourages multiple students that want to, discuss their findings and their thoughts on the topic. The next one is the start with the end strategy. So, not letting students know that maybe there's not always one right way to get to an answer of a question or to solve a challenge, right? And allowing them the freedom to try to get to that correct answer or that, to solve that challenge in different ways. And so presenting them with a question and then saying, okay, now it's up to you. So how do you think you're going to get to the end of this? And how are you going to answer this question? Whether that be individually or with pairs or groups. So really allowing them the freedom and then talking about at the end, okay, well, what worked well? What didn't work well, right? That helps to build that idea and giving them that freedom hopefully helps them remain engaged. And the next one we have here is the peer teaching strategy. So maybe you're covering a topic and we've all been there. You have a couple of students that have really mastered that topic, but there are still others that are kind of struggling and need a little bit more time to grasp that content. So rather than you just repeating it and you standing up there and trying to, get through to some of your student body, having those that really understand it work with the other students, right? So peer-to-peer teaching is a really powerful way. It not only allows maybe a different perspective on a topic for students to hear, but it helps those that maybe have mastered it to really internalize and think about their learning as well. So it's kind of a win-win. Next up we have here, so these ones are, a little bit deeper, a little bit more time, but still very powerful. So we have project-based learning, right? So really kind of creating or having an authentic real-world project that your students are doing. I'm sure we've all heard the question before, why does it matter, right? So really showing them, well, it matters because we're going to be doing this, we're going to be presenting this to, a local community group or something like that, right? So, if you go to our website, blueappleteacher.org, we have a list of projects there for you to kind of peruse and pick through. But hopefully there's something there that can help to teach that content that you need to teach, but do it in a meaningful way. Then we have work logs. Project-based learning and other projects as well or other assignments can have a lot of working parts to them, right? And so for students that maybe it's a little bit harder to keep organized the different parts that they have to cover, this is a great way for students to kind of keep track of all the different parts, and then they can clearly see, hey, this still needs to be done, or hey, this was completed. And the great thing about it is it can be with a group, it can be individually. So whatever works best for you and your students, or it can be both, right? So just a way to keep on track on different projects and make sure all the different parts are getting completed. The next we have the pillars of inquiry. So trying to create an inquiry-based lesson is really a great way to keep your students engaged in the topic. And so following these 4 essential pillars for our students is really helpful to make sure that they're staying engaged. So the students don't know the answer to the question when they start the unit, right? They're playing a driving role in determining the process of their learning. It's not just the teacher speaking to them and telling them what to do. You are constructing meaning with the students as you go along, and the students work as hard as possible. So taking all those into account hopefully creates that inquiry-based environment that really allows your students to be engaged. All right, we're going on to the last pillar for our positive classroom culture, and that is the conduct one. So again, maybe you're having some disruptive behaviors. What can we do to help maybe steer those students in the other direction and not have that affect what they are, what the other students are doing in there? So the first one we have is the brain gauging transitions. Transitions can be time killers, right? You're done with one thing, you need to move on to the next thing, and it just takes so long. So what can we do to maybe limit that time and keep the students focused on the task at hand to help them get through those transitions? So creating a way to, think about, for maybe older students, like, all right, we're going to time how long it takes for us to clean up, right? Or for younger students, we're going to count how many steps we're going to take when we go from the gym to the classroom, whatever it might be, just a way to keep them thinking. And again, trying to limit those, the time lost in transitions. Flexifying your rules. So as teachers, we have a lot of rules that we expect our students to follow, right? But when those rules get really long and the kids see those lists of rules, it just kind of, it can be a lot, right? So finding a way to being flexible with your rules doesn't mean that you're kind of budging on what you want your students to do, but it means to kind of concisely put them all, like we try to say 5 rules or less, right? So rather than saying be on time, bring all of your materials, and make sure that you hand in your homework on time, right? So rather than having those 3 separate rules, taking those and saying do your best, right? So then it kind of encompasses all of those things, and it allows for you to kind of have that flexibility when you're thinking about how you want your students to act in your classroom, and help, or hopefully helps to curb some of those behaviors. The next one, the marble jar. So this one's a really simple one, but it's a very powerful visual. You start the school year or even the class period with an empty jar, right? And as students are being self-directed, as they're staying on task, you add marbles to the jar, right? And you let them know that as they get to once they get to a certain point, maybe it's extra recess time, maybe it's pizza party, whatever it might be, you can decide the goal or the gift, or the treat, but they get to work towards that as they go along. And the next one we have here is but what did I say? So this one is great. This one is, if you have an argumentative student, just trying to be calm, be rational, and just say, okay, but what did I say? Don't engage them in an argument. Just kind of calmly repeat, but what did I say? It shows them that you care, you're consistent, and hopefully that helps with some of those behaviors. So we are going to pick it up here because I do have a couple more strategies. So we're going to go through these real quick here. The next one I have is the horn of silence. So if your students, maybe they're staying on task, right? But you need their attention to explain something to them. You can create a horn that kind of is a very loud noise. It's very funny. It's very novel for the students. You blow that when you want their attention. The conversation ends, and then they're listening to you for whatever you might need to say. Then you go back to, or they go back to what they're working on. The next one is classroom cash. So you see that dollar bill there? That is not George Washington on that dollar bill. That is me right there. And so having classroom cash is a great motivator for students to make sure they're staying on task, to make sure they're self-directed, and maybe they're going above and beyond to help others out. So for my group, or for my class, I have separate bank accounts. They can earn cash throughout the program or the class, but they can also lose cash, right? And then we have a store that we have for students for very simple things like candy or Pokemon cards, whatever your students might be interested in, so then they can spend that cash. You're probably familiar with the classroom contract, but really making sure to create those contracts together with the students. Don't just say, this is what I want you to do. Work together, let them know or have them tell you what they expect of you. You can talk with them and what what you expect of them. And so we have a free resource, Timely Topics, called the Classroom Community, which is linked in the hyperdoc. It has a way to create a classroom contract. It also has other lessons there for classroom management or creating that community that you can use as well. All right, let's go here. I'm going to skip that last one there. It's just shaking your sillies out. If you have a topic that you're maybe a little bit immature about, that students are a little bit immature about, maybe that middle school range, it's a really fun way to just kind of shake your sillies out, and maybe even if you're lacking energy, they can do that. So I have a real quick poll here that Robin is launching. I'm just curious, which of the 3 pillars do you think you'll use with your students? What will help you out the most with your students when you create that positive classroom culture?
All right, 5 seconds here. All right, so it looks like all the pillars will be used with students for sure, but at the top, we actually have tied. So pillar 1, community, and pillar 3, both at 53%. followed by 34% content.
All right, awesome. So yeah, like I said earlier, hopefully, there's something in each of those pillars that you can use to really create that positive classroom culture. And I want to end on this. So, this is a quote from a teacher, how each of your students feels inside your classroom will always triumph over everything else. We have that content, we have those things we have to teach. But if we're not able to connect with our students, if we're not able to let them know that they matter, all of that other stuff becomes a really big struggle, and it kind of becomes secondary, right? So as they matter, or as they come into your classroom, letting them know that they are more than just another student, that they matter to you, is always super powerful. So if you like what you heard, if you want to tell your administrator about it and bring us to your school. We have Flex PD, which is transformative, customized, and affordable, where you get to pick the delivery methods, the content that maybe meets your needs in your school, the budget, and the schedule. So if you want to learn more, you can go to vaei.org/flex-pd. And also, please join us next time for the Differentiation Decoded Supercharge Student Growth with 3 Simple Strategies webinar. That will be on Wednesday, November 16th at 4 p.m. And just a quick reminder again, with our sponsor, Blue Apple Projects, if you want to check those out, they're really awesome. They can be transformative for your students. Go to the website, blueappleteacher.org. You can look at all the list of projects that we have available for you. And to save 10% on your next project, you can use the coupon code webinar. All right. That is going to wrap up our time together. I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining. I'm really glad that you are here in this webinar, because it means that you do care about your students and you want to find some ways to get past those roadblocks. So I really hope that there are things that you could use. Please feel free to reach out to me, stay in touch. There's my email right there. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to work with you on how we can get through some of those challenges that you face. And it's really, been great to be able to share some of these strategies with you. And when you guys exit this webinar, there will be a very quick survey that we'd love for you to take about the webinar. So please feel free to fill that out for us. We certainly appreciate it. All right, thank you so much. And I hope that everyone has a great rest of your day and a great rest of your school year.